You ever watch a game where the final whistle is supposed to be the handshake moment, and instead it turns into a shove and shout that needs 5 teammates to pry people apart? That's what went down after Buffalo's 40-9 rout of Carolina. A dominant Bills performance topped off by an ugly, very avoidable altercation between left tackle Dion Dawkins and Panthers lineman Ashawn Robinson. Rotors, start with what mattered on the field. Buffalo steamrolled Carolina behind a career day from James Cook, 216 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns, and efficient work from Josh Allen, turning a Sunday that looked like a toss-up into a Bills blowout. These weren't fluky plays. Cook's long burst and the offense's consistent movement of the chains made the Panthers look like they were playing catch-up the whole afternoon. The scoreboard read 40-9 for a reason. Reuters. So tensions were already primed. When a game gets one-sided, the losing side can have thin nerves. Frustration, embarrassment, a feeling of being outplayed. Post-game handshakes are usually the pressure release valve, a little sportsmanlike dignity to keep things from boiling over. This time, the valve didn't hold. Video captured by reporters on the field shows Dawkins and Robinson exchanging words during the handshake line. The exchange quickly escalated. Robinson ripped off his helmet, they got chest to chest, and teammates and staff from both teams had to swarm in and separate them before the situation turned worse. Reports say Dawkins appeared to throw something at Robinson while being restrained, which only added gasoline to the moment. The melee didn't last long, but it was tense and messy, and it came on the heels of a game that the Panthers had little to celebrate. Sports.yahoo.com. Why this matters beyond the highlight clip, optics and consequences. Optically, a big blowout followed by a near brawl looks terrible for the league and for both teams. For Buffalo, it's an unnecessary distraction ahead of a big matchup. The Bills already have to shift gears quickly to face stronger opponents. And for Carolina, it's a public airing of frustrations that already shows on the scoreboard. The NFL doesn't love post-game scuffles. They attract fines, suspensions, and headlines that linger longer than the original game. At this point, outlets report it's unclear whether Dawkins or Robinson will face discipline, but given how the league has handled similar incidents, somebody's going to get a phone call. CBS Sports. Let's be practical about the causes. First, momentum. When the ground game is working and your defense can't stop it, tempers flare. Cook's 216 yards weren't just a breakout. They were evidence that Buffalo figured out Carolina's defensive gaps and repeatedly exploited them. Second, proximity and personalities. Offensive linemen and defensive tackles spend more time hugging and shoving than most fans realize. The trench warfare breeds trash talk. When a player is already irked, maybe Robinson felt disrespected, maybe Dawkins felt heat for a late push, a 5-second exchange can snowball fast. Third, timing. Handshakes are a ritual that assumes some mutual respect. When that respect is violated, the ritual becomes the flashpoint. Buffalo rumblings. What should teams do now? If you're Buffalo, you clean it up quickly and internally. Publicly, apologize for the incident, but more importantly, demonstrate discipline. Players involved should be near the front of the team behavioral review. Coaches need to refocus the locker room on the next opponent and minimize the story. If the league suspends or fines someone, accept it and move on. Fighting the narrative isn't worth the distraction. If you're Carolina, you perform a longer, more constructive reset. Own the defensive film, fix the gaps that allowed the ground game to explode, and keep your veterans from turning frustration into reaction. Leadership matters. The way a team responds the following week tells you far more than a post-game shove. BuffaloBills.com. There's also a human element that gets lost in the hot takes. Players are competitive, emotional people who carry their whole week into Sunday. Practice battles, personal slights, contract worries, injuries. None of that excuses physical confrontations, but it does explain why they happen. The ideal outcome is that both teams use this as a teachable moment, enforce responsibility, make sure the players involved understand the optics and repercussions, then get back to football. Prediction-wise, expect fines or internal discipline at minimum. The NFL likes to clamp down on stuff that risks injury or public relations headaches. Teams will also probably remind players about sportsmanship rules and possibly circulate body cam or headset footage internally to determine if anything else happened off camera. Publicly, both sides will tone it down. Privately, coaches will remind players that a punch or helmet toss can completely alter a season's narrative. CBS Sports, bottom line, this was a bad look at the end of a game where the Bills did a lot of things right and the Panthers did a lot of things wrong. The fight is a headline grabber, but it's the film and the fix that will matter. Buffalo wants to keep its momentum without distractions. Carolina needs to turn embarrassment into improvement. For fans, the clip is dramatic and viral. For the teams, it's an annoyance they'd prefer to box up and forget. The next few days, coach statements, possible league discipline, and how both locker rooms handle the aftermath will tell you more about their character than the shove itself. Think a 40-9 beatdown ends with a polite handshake? Not on this Sunday. What started as the usual post-game walkthrough exploded into a sideline confrontation. Bills left tackle Dion Dawkins and Panthers veteran Sean Robinson traded words, tempers flared, teammates swarmed, and a routine exit turned into a national clip that won't die all week. Here's what matters. Plain and fast. Dawkins walks through the handshake line after Buffalo's blowout. Robinson takes offense, whether at a glance, a tone, or what looked like a smug 40-9 shrug, and confronts him. Words become a push, helmets come off, teammates and staff from both sides separate them. No reported punches that changed a scoreboard, but videos spread instantly, and that spread is the real punishment. Why this spikes so high? The visual is perfect for social media. A dominant win, a perceived slight, a shove, short, emotional, loopable footage that fuels hot takes. In other words, the incident didn't need to be dramatic to become dramatic. It only needed a camera and a timeline. Now the practical fallout. First, the league will review. Key questions. Who initiated? Was it a shove or an attempted strike? Did either player remove equipment or use abusive language? The NFL has been strict about post-game melees, expect fines at a minimum, and suspension talk if the tape shows escalation. Teams often dish out internal discipline too, fines, mandated counseling, or brief inactivity to cool things down. Second, locker room optics. These scuffles aren't just clips, they're internal signals. If Dawkins is viewed as needlessly flashy, leadership has to manage credibility. If Robinson is seen as overreacting, that's a different headache. Coaches and veteran leaders will have to smooth it over fast because locker room divides cost wins. The smart move is immediate. Controlled messages. Acknowledge the incident, promise review, and pivot to football. Silence makes noise louder. Third, PR and fan reaction. The losing side's fan base smells disrespect. The winning side's fans celebrate toughness. Media turns the moment into a narrative. Leadership problem, lack of class, emotional control failure, pick your headline. Teams need a tight, honest response to stop the clip from being the week's only story. What should the teams do? Fast internal review, short public statement, and targeted player coaching. Make the discipline proportional and visible. Then force the conversation back to the field. Practice, preparation, next opponent. Let football wins and accountability